Yes, hi, hello, and welcome. We are broadcasting live from GlobalAIPreneurs, the premier global gateway and unified operating system for trusted AI enterprises. Right now, we are witnessing an unprecedented paradigm shift. The AI landscape is expanding exponentially, stretching across 8 plus categories and over 120 distinct technologies. Yet, this explosion has brought an unintended bottleneck. Enterprise buyers are facing severe decision paralysis. Investors are swimming in unvetted noise and brilliant founders remain isolated from the cross border institutional bridges. They need to scale. The results are clear capital inefficiency and deployment friction. Promoted by the Global Council for the Promotion of International Trade and the Global Council for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics. Global Airtrainers was built to change that narrative. We are moving decisively past passive directories. We are a multi layer engagement engine spanning technical, operational reviews, and community rankings, connecting enterprise demands directly with trusted AI supply. Operating across our primary global hubs in India, Singapore, UAE, Saudi Arabia, the USA, the UK, Switzerland, and the EU, South Africa, Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria. We are bridging the gap between raw potential and institutional deployment. Today, as part of our investor interview series, we are privileged to welcome a leader who works ex- exemplifies responsible leadership, strategic investment, AI governance, and inclusive innovation. Zemo, thank you for joining us today to help shape the future of global AIpreneurs. Zamokuhle Aja-Okorie is the founder and CEO of OAO Investments, a South African operator-led holding company built on a single non-negotiable conviction that growth must uplift everyone it touches. OYO builds, acquires, and transforms businesses across technology, healthcare, financial services, industrials, and media, not simply to generate returns but to serve, inspire, and transform vast lives. This is the OYO mandate. It's a not a tagline. It is how every decision gets made. Guided by the Kwanda philosophy, a Zulu word meaning growth. Zemo leads OYO as a steward of businesses and of the communities those businesses serve. Kwanda defines OYO approach to capital, dignified, purpose driven, and deeply accountable to the people at every level of the enterprise. OYO measures success not just by return on investments, but by return on impact. The philosophy is expressed through two capital platforms. The OYO Leap Fund partners with established South African SMEs ready for transformational growth, deploying operational expertise alongside capital to build businesses that are investable, scalable, and exit ready. The Hula VC Fund backs township and rural entrepreneurs with at least 50% of capital mandate for Black women owned and managed businesses. Both funds are built on the same operating system: stabilize, solve, reset, and grow. Through OYO Technologies, Chip Lab Zemo is pursuing one of Africa's most ambitious long-term bets to develop 1 lakh AI microchip designers by 2050 and build the continent's first homegrown AI hardware ecosystem. Africa, in her view, shouldn't only consume technology, it should design it. Through OYO Women and the Door Openers, she is advising women as architects of economic change, not participants in systems built without them. The Women in Leadership programming equips women with the leadership capacity, skills, and conviction to build industries with intention and excellence. Zemo leads with her peers framework, principled, elegant solutions, emotional capital, risk awareness, straight talk. She speaks directly without jargon and constantly challenges every room to move from awareness to action. Her topics span AI governance, responsible investment, African capital markets, women leadership, governance as a growth driver, and building businesses that outlive their founders. She is a speaker of audience who are ready to think definitely about what growth is actually for. Zemo, over to you.
All right. So in my presentation today, the theme is based on capital without purpose is just money. At OAO Investments, we believe in capital with character, and that's what I'm going to base the session on. As you stated, I'm with OAO Investments, an investment holdings company with 6 pillars, but in today's session, we're focusing on 2 of those pillars, OAO Leap, which deals with mergers and acquisitions, and we have the fund as well as OAO Technology. And I'll talk about our subsidiaries within the technology space. So I'm firstly going to start with practical expertise. When you look at AI as an institutional leverage, not automation for its sake. Sushma, capital entrusted to us, OAO, carries a responsibility, and that is to use every tool available, including AI, in service of a long-term transformation rather than just a short-term efficiency. And how we do that is we look at 3 things: agentic workflows, Kwanda AI foundations, which is a course that we have, as well as ChipLab, our subsidiary, an AI microchip design subsidiary. So I'm going to start with the agentic workflows. To us, it's not theoretical. No. What we do is we've built agentic workflows into how we operate, not just how we advise companies, but it's our day-to-day bread. And in a manufacturing turnaround we backed recently, part of the operational rebuild was introducing remote monitoring and predictive maintenance technology. This gave management visibility where they could see their assets, which were like hundreds of kilometers away, and they could see the condition of the asset and where they needed service. What that meant was they did not have to travel out far to see how the asset was performing. And it just shows that is how AI is supposed to work within an organization, where AI is doing real operational work inside a real portfolio company. So that is how we handled it in manufacturing. It wasn't just a slide about the future of AI, it was AI in practice. And then the next case that I'm going to look at is Kwanda AI Foundations. Recently in South Africa, we had our Youth Day in the month of June. And what we did is we developed a program called OAO Kwanda AI Foundations through our subsidiary OAO Technology, where we launched free AI skills programs for out-of-school South African youth who don't have qualifications and needed data, to join. And what we did is we opened it up for free, meaning that they did not need the data. And this is how we then brought about AI, where AI was positioned as an access tool, helping the youth to be upskilled and get jobs. And then the other use case that I wanted to speak about is ChipLab. ChipLab is Africa's first AI microchip design institution. And what we do there is, in this subsidiary, we are looking at educating over 100,000 students by the year 2050. And this is in partnership with a government organization called MICT-CETA. We've partnered with them, and we are looking at practical expertise for chip designers and growing the chip design the chip design sector within South Africa, but most importantly, bring it out to the world and the rest of Africa. So, OAO actually treats AI as operational intelligence, embedded into how the firm underwrites, how we monitor, and how we support our portfolios company. It's not just a headline feature. We don't see AI in that way. We look at practical expertise. In our case, means using AI to widen who gets to participate in the economy, not narrowing it down. So we open it out to the masses, and it's based on our peers' values, which you spoke about, which is principled, elegant solutions, emotional capital, risk awareness, and straight talk, and also most importantly, built on our purpose, which you touched on earlier. Yeah. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is the 3 to 5, let's just see, sorry, yes, 3 to 5 year horizon where we see OAO going and AI, you know, most, if you look at the horizon currently, it's usually based on US, Silicon Valley, and framing of the shift from automation to agentic AI. The differentiated position here is to root the same shift in African market realities. You know, we can't always be looking to Silicon Valley. We're looking at bringing it here into Africa. And what that means is the shift from automation to autonomous agentic systems assumes a baseline of digital infrastructure and skills that much of the continent doesn't have yet. We don't have it, but we're working towards that. So in the next 3 to 5 years, for Africa, it isn't when do we get agentic AI? It's how do we build the foundational layer? You know, chip design capacity, digital literacy, connected SMEs, manufacturing, and all of that must be fast enough that African businesses aren't permanently a step behind. And that agentic transition must allow African founders to participate in this AI revolution. So we look at 4 factors when we discuss the 3 to 5 year horizon. We look at what's already in motion. You know, it's not a future tense bet for us. At OAO, as I said earlier, we've built agentic workflows into how our portfolio companies operate. So agentic AI has to be part and parcel in the business. We also look at infrastructure ownership. And there we touch on chip lab. And then there's the foundational skills at scale. We need to educate our youth, not just our youth, because most adults actually are not even aware of how AI works. And then investment grade SMEs, you know, agentic ecosystems only benefit businesses capable of adopting them. So within OAO Leap, the work is on operational readiness, and OAO's founder education content both point towards the same problem, that scaling SMEs to a level of operational maturity where they can actually use the tools, not just be sold to them, you know. So we believe in them using the tools efficiently. Yeah. So I'm just going to move on to my next slide, which is the scaling blueprint. Now, when we look at this, scaling internationally usually starts with deciding what not to standardize. OAO Leap's approach to SME growth is built around operational readiness before expansion, not expansion before readiness, because we find that many times people want to expand, but they're not yet ready. The instinct is to move fast across the markets, and it's not the right approach. The discipline is actually knowing which markets are actually ready to be entered. And when you look at this, you know, there's technical decisions that you need to look at, as well as ethical decisions. And when we talk about technical decisions, we're talking about building African-owned technical capacity rather than importing it. It is scaling decisions with long timelines, you know, and when I say owning technical capacity, I mean, instead of always going to the West and looking for solutions, we create our own solutions and own those solutions. And then there's ethical decisions, which one always needs to factor in the organization. Growth that doesn't hold dignity and inclusion as a design constraint isn't growth that we as OAO would back. And it's what our Kwanda philosophy is based on. Sushma, you touched on it in that Kwanda is a Zulu word which means to grow. And in practice, what that means is scale has to remain inclusive and economically enabling, not just numerically impressive, it's just to show off. No. Concretely, it shows up as our insistence on programs being free and qualification free. It's open to all. And you can see this within the Kwanda AI Foundations program. So scale doesn't quietly exclude the people who need it most. If anything, when you're scaling as a founder, you have to open it up to people so it benefits people. Then I'm going to move over to the next slide, which is on governance. And here, when we talk about governance, we actually use an AIM approach at OAO whenever, like, especially if we're working on an LLM and prompting. We look at AIM, which is what is the audience, what is the intention, and what is the message. And then we then tell the LLM how to act, the input and the mission. Then we have what we call map, where we look at the memory. Does the LLM have the correct memory? The assets in place, and what actions the LLM needs to take. And then we prompt. And whenever we're prompting or working with LLM, there are non-negotiables that we do not at all, like we enforce these all the time, where we always look and say we're separating facts versus assumption, and this is what actually helps in stopping AI slop. We check names, we check dates, because as we know, LLMs will usually fabricate and tell you 24th of June. Sorry, 24th of July is a Thursday, when we both know that today is a Friday, and no invented claims or fake sources. We actually saw it, sadly, in the South African government recently, where one of the policies that were being put into place were actually scrapped out because they used AI and it invented claims with and had fake sources. The other non-negotiable is our final output, that is professional and it's also aligned to OAO and our brand guide and our policies. So those are the non-negotiables. And then we also have an acceptance checklist, that there's a clear ask, and the audience is actionable, and also within 60 seconds. The other thing is the structure matches the deliverable. Verification is always done. We can't just accept what AI has given us and say, you know what, this is it, we're working with it. No, if it hasn't been verified, it does not go out to the public. And we also base our use in AI on the South African market. We use South African English, and just a few nuances, which then teaches the AI how to behave so that you get better outputs every time. Now, next up in my slide, which is my last slide actually, I'm going to touch on ecosystem synergy. So here, the theme is how OAO can actually collaborate and contribute to global AI entrepreneurs ecosystem. And when we talk about this, as OAO, we're not saying, please invest in us, with the two funds that we have. No, rather we're saying, let's build the parts of the AI ecosystem which help entrepreneurs and in essence helps our communities. And what OAO is bringing into this ecosystem is we have a live case study in AI infrastructure. We're building outside the usual Silicon Valley or global North narrative. And how we're doing this is through Chip Lab. Might I add as well that, Chip Lab is actually registered in South Africa, in Nigeria, as well as in the States. And, it's useful for any ecosystem trying to have an honest conversation about AI access and ownership beyond the application layer. The other thing that we do, what OAO is looking for from the system, is partnerships that can help scale Kwanda AI foundations beyond South Africa. We want to open up this free education and say whoever wants to use it, please, you don't even need permission. You can actually access it freely. And we're also looking at co-investment or knowledge sharing relationships with other operators building AI infrastructure in emerging markets. So we're very happy to be part of this group, because then we're saying we're here, we're open, we want to work with you. And partnerships, what we're looking for is we're looking for partnerships to benchmark and pressure test OAO's own agentic workflow governance. We want to say, okay, here's company B, and this is how they do things. So what is it that they're doing better? How can we improve? Or what is it that we're doing better? And we can also share those expertise with them. So in essence, that's what we're looking for. As I said earlier on, we're not just looking at invest in us. Here's our deal flow. No, we're actually saying we want a partnership. We want an AI ecosystem that we can be a part of and flourish, I mean. So that brings me to the end of my presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sushma.
Yeah, thank you, Zamu, for that inspiring and thought-provoking presentation. Your perspective
Thank
on
you.
responsible AI governance and ethical leadership and cross-border investment. So it's valuable to our global AIpreneurs community. So I'd like to
Thank you.
ask you a few questions to explore your vision and experience in greater depth.
Yes.
So, my first question is artificial intelligence is advancing rapidly, but public trust often struggles to keep pace with innovation based on your experience building governance framework and responsible investment platforms. What fundamentals principles should AI startups adopt from day one to build trustworthy, ethical, and global scalable AI businesses?
Um, I think it's important for me to just state, Sushma, governance isn't a constraint on speed. And most founders will look at governance and say, we'll actually put it aside and deal with it at a later stage. No, in fact, startups that build it early move faster later, because then you don't have to go back when you're down the road and say, oh, we need to bring in governance. And what that means is that then in the future, they won't be firefighting trust failures when they've scaled. So as I stated, it's not a constraint on speed. And what we look at and what founders should be looking at is three things, that humans stay accountable always. No AI output should leave a business without human verification, which I stated in my presentation, and it must have human sign off. That's the difference between AI as leverage and AI as a liability. The other thing concerning the foundational principles is, you need to separate facts from assumptions and label the difference. I spoke about South Africa and where they gave a world example of exactly this. A few months ago, the government's own, what was it called? It was a draft of the national AI policy had to be withdrawn. At least 6 out of the 70 academic citations turned out to be AI generated. There were fake studies that were attributed to real journals. And honestly, in 2026, AI slop is not acceptable. So one needs to separate the facts from assumptions. And then the last point that I want to touch on is you need to govern from your actual market, not a borrowed one. If we as South Africa, as a developing economy, if we're going to look at a framework built for Silicon Valley or Brussels, that doesn't map into Africa. It doesn't map into Southeast Asia or Latin America. Um, so if you're going to take a draft policy that is based on emerging markets, it's not going to work for you. And it's worth noting separately from the citation scandal that this very the issue that the South African government had, they actually took from the EU AI Act. And that framework was built for Europe, not African markets. So it's important to look at your market and say, what works for my market? And then those are the three things that I would say concerning the foundational principles that every AI startup should look at. Human stays accountable, always separate facts from assumptions, and then govern from your own actual market, not based on what other people are doing.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Zamu, for those are the valuable and insights for the startups who is
Thank you.
looking into it. So
Yes.
moving to my next question. So through OAO Investments and your venture funds, you have worked extensively with enterprises and growing businesses across Africa, right? So, from an
Mhm.
investor's perspective, what distinguish AI startups that are truly investment ready from those that have strong technology but struggle to scale commercially?
Okay. So here, I think, you know, something that's very important is to have clear financial records.
Mhm.
What that means, you must have historic, you must have current and projected, uh, know your EBITDA, know your gross profit, net profit, all of that as a founder, you should know. A brilliant number with no clean numbers behind it isn't investment ready. It's just a research project. The other thing is we love to look at your story. Um, the founder fit and the team, not just the forecast. OAO Leap looks at the ethics, the ambition, the story, the ability to scale responsibly, not only the pitch deck. Many times you'll find that founders are concerned on the pitch deck. Yes, it's great to concern yourself on the pitch deck, but we need to hear your story. There's a South African bank, ABSA, and I'm going to use their line, which is your story matters. And it really does matter because, especially in this world that we're living in, where there's AI, we want to hear you, the individual, the personality. And so that's a very key thing that we look at. And it applies just as much in a pitch as it does anywhere else, the story. Then the other thing that I touched on as well is knowing your numbers cold. You have to know your numbers. You can't just say, oh, I'm not sure. I don't know how many times I've heard founders say, actually, I don't know the numbers, but next time I'll bring my accountant. By then the meeting is already over. And especially you find this with technical founders in particular, often that they can't answer the questions under pressure. And it's usually the first thing that surfaces in due diligence. So that's key. And then the last thing that I would say they need to focus on, especially AI specifically, governance and readiness is what makes the picture. A startup with excellent technology, but has no framework for how outputs are verified, how data is handled, or how accountability sits, that carries operational and reputational risk. And in the beginning, it might not show, but once the due diligence process comes in down the line, we'll see that actually, they've got excellent technology, but there are no frameworks here. So is this a deal that we can back? Most of the times, no. We wouldn't necessarily back this. And I'm actually going to go back to the manufacturing business that I spoke about. So we saw this play out concretely in that business, and they had about roughly 35 million rands in annual revenue that had been passed over, and funders were not interested because the numbers didn't hold up to scrutiny. It wasn't a bad business, it was an amazing business, but the founders did not understand how to present their company and present the financials. And what, for instance, their debtor days were about 6 months. And when we came in and started working with that, we dropped that, and then it became 60 days. And the other thing is they weren't reporting correctly. And roughly 20 million rands in specialized equipment was sitting unrecorded. And then when a funder comes along and looks at this, it's like, no, but how do we fund this business when, yes, it's operating, it's making, a profit, but you're not showing everything that's on the balance sheet. And once we sorted that and put it onto the balance sheet, a developmental a development finance institution, sorry, one of the South African government's bank was able to step in as a founder, because then they could see that actually this business has about 20 million of assets, 20 million rands in assets, and these assets, along with them, they also have stock, which is not documented. So this is an important thing that founders forget, that the numbers matter. And that's what investment readiness looks like in practice. It's really about the idea, but it's about whether an investor can actually see what they're being asked to fund. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. That's very interesting way to look at it, how founders has to know their numbers about their company and
Yes.
everything. Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's move to our next question. So Chip Lab represents a bold vision for strengthening Africa's role in the global AI ecosystem. So through semiconductor innovation and talent development, what strategic
Mhm.
investments in education, research, and industry collaboration are most critical for emerging economics to build global competitive AI ecosystem?
Okay. So I think what's important is to state that, emerging economies, they don't become competitive by consuming AI faster. And one of the reasons is because as humans, we can consume AI as fast as we want, but we'll never catch up. Instead, they become competitive by owning a layer of the stack that the world already controls. So if you're going to say, no, we're just going to use AI, then you don't become competitive. Own a layer of that stack. And emerging economies become competitive by owning the stack. And how do they do this? One, they can look at owning the hardware layer as well as the software layer that designs it. Central Africa, for instance, DRC, accounts for close to about 58% of the world's tantalum. And this is a mineral inside the capacitors found virtually in every cell phone. Yet DRC doesn't design any of the chips that are there, So the design software is just as concentrated. 2 or 3 companies, when you look at them, Synopsys, there's Cadence, who is a partner of Chip Lab, and Siemens EDA control roughly 80%, 85% of that market. And a single commercial license can cost anywhere from about $50,000 to $500,000 per seat per year. That's arguably easily like the most expensive, most controlled layer of the entire stack. So we need to get entrepreneurs entering that stack. And how we've done this on our side is by bringing Chip Lab, where it exists to change that relationship of consumption, but rather designing. So that's one thing that can be done. And then the other thing that's important is building talent pipelines with commercial, not just academic intent. Because, it's all good and fair to educate, but what's the point of educating if you're not going to turn that into revenue? And this matters because an academic-only pipeline produces graduates with no way to put that skill to work. Whereas with a commercial pipeline, it ties training directly to real design roles and revenue generating work. That's the difference basically between AI literacy and an actual AI livelihood. Yeah. And lastly, what I would say is you need to pair infrastructure investment with foundational digital skills at the base of the pyramid. How we did this was with our Kwanda AI Foundations course. So just by having that foundation, you can then build up the tier. So yeah, as I said, emerging economies, they don't need to be just consuming AI. Instead, how we become competitive is by owning a layer of the stack. You can start as small as the bottom where you've got a foundations course or you're doing some foundation work, and then move your way up to the top.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank
Zamu.
you.
Your insights have been incredibly thoughtful and inspiring from Responsible AI. So, like to move next question. Yes,
Yes.
AI adoption accelerates across governments, enterprises, and financial institutions. Responsible governance is becoming a competitive advantage rather than a simply a compliance requirement. How can business leaders successfully balance rapid AI innovation with transparency, accountability, and responsible decision making?
So, Sushma, AI is a leverage tool,
Yeah.
not a replacement model. And if AI helped draft, a
Mm.
human still owns it. That single rule resolves most of the tension between speed and accountability because it forces ownership at every step rather than at the end. So every step, if a human is there verifying, you're part of the solution and not, giving AI full authority. And then the other thing that can be done by business leaders is building the framework before the pressure, not during it. And you remember I spoke about it earlier where I said, if you're going to leave governance till the end or the framework at the end, you're going to be in trouble. And then you're going to experience extreme pressure. And we at OAO Investments, we actually have an internal AI usage standard policy which runs the aim and the map that I spoke about. And you know, it sounds procedural, and most of the times, like our team, when we first initiated it, they were like, "Oh, this just seems too much and stuff." But it's what makes AI safe to use. If you've got that policy and you've got that framework and say, actually, we're not going to just let it run amok and then having to defend it later. And then, as I've spoken about previously, the non-negotiables and not preferences. So no invented facts or fabricated figures, no confidential data in public AI tools, no external output sent without human verification. And these aren't just slowdowns, they're guardrails that let the team move quickly without gambling on trust. Because our biggest asset now as humans is trust. And then lastly, governance is a due diligence question now. I can't state this, anymore. It is not a future compliance task. It's a task for today. Leaders who treat it in that way will have a structural advantage over those who wait for the regulation to force the issue. So do it today.
Mm.
And what I'm going to say is the business that governs AI well now will be the one still standing in the future, especially when the regulatory wave arrives. It's a competitive advantage disguised as a compliance function. And yeah, it's exactly that. So prepare now. Don't wait for the future and say, "Oh no, we'll get to it once." It's a non-negotiable. It should be a non-negotiable today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's an important reminder that responsible AI persons who
Yeah.
are out there, so
Yes,
governance, it's not a purpose-driven investment and the building worlds across AI infrastructure. So everyone has to look into the governance thing. So
correct.
yeah, moving to our next question and the final question as well. So, Global AIpreneurs aims to become one of the world's leading ecosystem connecting AI founders, enterprises, investors, governance, innovation leaders. So, based on your experience building cross-border investment platforms and responsible innovation ecosystem, what is the single biggest opportunity global AIpreneurs has to accelerate trusted AI commercialization across emerging and developed markets?
Okay, so um, The opportunity isn't really about connecting more people, right?
Mhm.
I think what the opportunity is that it's making connections between them trustworthy. I'm going to use that word again, trust. Trustworthy enough so that capital actually moves in both directions across the markets that usually talk past each other. And that's exactly what Global AI Preneurs is positioned to build. A verification engine, connecting AI supplies, enterprise demand, and capital, which is the same problem we at OAO are solving on the African side and what we've been doing for years. So the bridge is what's required from global AIpreneurs, not just the directory. The real gap is a shortage of AI startups. It isn't a shortage of the AI startups, and it isn't a shortage of capital. It's the absence of a trusted bridge between the two, especially across these markets. And this is where global AIpreneurs can come in and say, actually, we are that gap that joins founders with capital. And I'll give an example, for instance, in South Africa, in the Eastern Cape, there's actually a Mercedes-Benz plant.
Mhm.
And the Mercedes-Benz plant ships throughout the globe, the C classes from that plant. And Mercedes-Benz in Germany and in Brazil, that's shipping out, the same standard is adhered to, you know. And what that means is nobody is buying a car that asks which factory was it made in, because the quality bridge between these markets is always trusted and verified. So AI enterprises and capital need that same kind of bridge. And in most emerging markets, it doesn't exist. So this is, where global AIpreneurs can play a role. And then we at OAO, we actually already offer that, where we look at real governance experience tested on our portfolio companies, plus a direct line into African capital and enterprise buyers through our two funds. We have OAO Leap, which is a private equity fund, and we also have Hula, which is our VC fund that focuses on township and rural economy. And, we think of it as like a verified local operator standing at the on-ramp, not another name added to a directory. So that bridge is important. And then, I'm going to reiterate this word again, trust. It has to travel in both directions. The developed market capital needs confidence that emerging market AI ventures are governed
Mhm.
and the investment ready. And South Africa already has like a live example of this. BMW, about a few years ago, established its IT hub right in South Africa's capital city, Pretoria, where it develops and maintains IT solutions for the entire BMW group globally. And the core global infrastructure built and run from South Africa, not a regional side project. So emerging market founders, in turn, need confidence that the global platforms understand their operating context rather than applying a one-size framework. So the emerging market looks to the developed economies to build that trust and say, what, we trust you. Here's capital, and vice versa. So the biggest opportunity is building that two-way trust. Yeah.
That I think that gives our audience a lot to reflect on AI and governance,
Yes.
enterprise, and everything. So, what an exceptional and inspiring conversation, Zemo.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you that you guys have actually built a stage where trust and technology get to share the same conversation. This is exactly the bridge Africa's next chapter needs. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for you sharing your remarkable insights and visions with the global AI trainers community. So, to everyone joining us from around the world, thank you for being part of today's session. The future of artificial intelligence will be shaped not only by technological breakthroughs but also by international collaborations, responsible governance, and shared innovation. If you are an AI founder, innovator, investor, or enterprise leader looking to become part of this growing global ecosystem, we invite you to join us and at Global AIpreneurs. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, keep innovative, keep collaborating, and together let's build a trusted global AI future. Thank you, Zimo, for joining us today.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank